Okay, so let's get right into this. Trump has a solid win for Social Security benefits. You guys know that he's going to be using AI through the Stargate program to basically build out a futuristic system using the CRISPR program to basically get rid of cancer and also fix most disabling conditions that would put somebody onto disability benefits. Now, that is huge and that is a massive plan. But this video is not about that. This video is about what Trump is doing that Biden made vastly worse. Like, if you were to say what was the greatest stain on Biden's 4-year presidency, it would be the amount of individuals who were trafficked, the amount of individuals who were basically going and obtaining illegal substances and using them in a very nefarious way. And unfortunately, as a result of that, I saw during the past 4 years the amount of individuals in places like, in Florida, places like Bithlo, Pine Hills, where drugs were significantly more rampant and available at a cheap price than they were towards the end of Trump's initial 4 years. So what's happening is this is a solid win. Social Security disability benefits and Social Security retirement benefits and supplemental security income benefits have had a disease to them for a while, a very long time. The disease is basically substance abuse. And what would happen is individuals would have to retire early because they were abusing substances, or their length of time that they would be alive would be shortened because of abusing substances. Or individuals would have to go into disability benefits as a result of substance abuse, causing them to have impairments that would limit their ability to go ahead and work at such a level that they could no longer work an 8-hour workday. You see a lot of this, especially with the SSI crew, the supplemental security income crew. Now, here's the deal. Why is this all relevant? Why is this all happening? It's because of fentanyl. Fentanyl is basically a drug that is incredibly dangerous. A person who helped me, who actually taught me how to roof. So, just to clarify, my connection is vastly more than just this one, but this is one that sticks out in my head. And keep in mind, I have probably over the course of my almost 12 years of owning my own law firm, I probably had over 30 to 40 people who passed away directly as a result of fentanyl. A lot of this fentanyl comes from China, which is then redirected to South America, Mexico, etc. Then it gets funneled into the US. So, what happened with this whole situation? Trump has designated cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. What does it mean for policing? So basically, he did an executive order. This is from Police One, written by, I'm not actually sure who wrote this one. Let me see what we've got here. Written by Michael Brown. On January 20th, 2025, President Trump signed an executive order designating cartels and other organizations as foreign terrorist organizations and specially designated global terrorists. This declaration will fundamentally change the approach of local, state, and federal counter-narcotics investigations, special operations, and prosecutions. So, put another way, they're going to be able to go ahead and get more of these drug traffickers, these cartel people. They're going to be able to go ahead and prosecute them better and keep them behind bars for longer. Now, here's the basic deal. The order will impact every aspect of the counter narcotics policing, from local officers on patrol to state and federal agencies, which now have additional integrated resources at their disposal. So here's the basic deal. The battle against cartels, it's not new. He was beginning it in his original presidency. And then, of course, Biden got in, opened, the floodgates when it comes to our border, and allowed for the most crime this country has ever seen to seep into America. So, and the weird thing is, I was actually talking, and the reason I'm doing this video today is because I was talking with somebody, one of my friends, who's very, very liberal. Like, there's, to them, Fox News is evil incarnate, and Satan is the host of it. And, the weird thing is that both sides, the people on the super right and the people on the super left, they are indoctrinated. There is no school of anything else that could theoretically exist in their brains. But somebody who watches both the left and the right, I definitively know that the left legacy news channels are effing with more people's minds than a lot of the middle and the middle right stuff. I mean, Fox is middle right. They're definitely not far right. You can go on to any one of these other far right channels. Fox News ain't even close to what that stuff is. Like, there's a whole nother world out there that is far beyond. That's over there. That's scary as shit, right? that directly goes to the things that like my people had to like escape Europe from so that I could survive and exist in America. But the bottom line is the amount of BS spewing and theoretical potential issues, or redefining how that stuff is happening way, way, way on the left, and it's very upsetting because inherent in doing that, they let a lot of criminals into the United States. Now, who works with a lot of criminals? I work with a lot of criminals all the time, all the time. Yesterday, I was at the homeless office. I met with only criminals. So, Royalty 72, Diana, thank you for the $2 donation and the $5 donation. That's absolutely. Oh, I see it up there. I didn't see it before. Thank you for the $5 donation as well. Catch up with me with a message on Facebook as well, because for some reason I'm having a hard time getting that thing linked up. It doesn't give me that option right now. All right. With that said, just to be clear, we were seeing a lot of individuals buying, essentially laced drugs cheaply. And that's a problem because a lot of these disabled people and elderly people, they want pain medication and they want it cheap. How cheap? Real cheap. Much cheaper than they can get it from the doctor's office. Now, here's the thing. Fentanyl is vastly better at hiding pain than most other drugs. However, it is extremely dangerous. Interesting timing is that the FDA has just approved a novel non-opioid treatment for moderate to severe acute pain. So Trump's timing on this, he lucks out because they're coming out with a new, basically pain medication. This was released, immediate release on January 30th, 2025. Basically, it's 1:28 a.m. on January 31st. So basically today, this was released. Today, the U.S. Food and Drug Administration approved, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. It's JOURNAVX. Let's call it Journax or something, or SUZETRIGINE, Suzetrigine. Who the hell knows? These names are all made up. 50 milligram oral tablets, a first in class non opioid analgesic to treat moderate to severe acute pain in adults. This new medication reduces pain by targeting a pain signaling pathway involving sodium channels in the peripheral nervous system before pain signals to reach the brain. So, what am I getting at with this? Why is this important to Social Security benefits? It's important because disability, retirement benefits have been plagued with people having to go on retirement early and people who have become disabled as a result of the abuse of drugs throughout their life. Now, there will be somebody in the audience on the left, and it's not the middle left, it's the far left, who wants to talk about pot, marijuana. Ain't nobody bringing that up, man. That ain't this club. You're at the wrong party. Okay, we're talking about hardcore stuff that literally, is so destructive to somebody's life that they lose their job, they lose their house, and they end up owing, some dealer, their life. So then they have to go run for the dealer to get off of their kill list. Okay, we're talking about real shit here, not the cutesy flowers. And God, it always annoys me when people want to do that. Like, when I bring up this argument, they're like, well, this guy, and I'm like, no. You gotta pay the ticket on this one first before you get to, you know what I mean? Or my favorite, we're talking about this, and they're like, well, in the middle right here, this other thing. No. You gotta pay the ticket on that argument first. You gotta get through that one first. You can't schmooze it with the middle. You ever notice that when people want to like discuss something, they always go to like the mass middle ground on it, and they're like, yeah, but in this case, and you're like, no. Marijuana, is not mass ruining. It's not killing my claimants. Okay. Nobody's arguing that. So anyways, new drug comes out approved by the FDA. It's been like 20 years for that category since the FDA has approved a new drug. So this is new. If you guys are like sitting there in pain, go Google it, find out about it. It's a potential new option as a pain medication that you could be using. Back to this other thing. Why is this whole cartel thing such a big deal for disability benefits? All right, so we've gone through the basics. You understand cartels, they're going to have more money to go and find them, more money to bring them in, more money to prosecute them. And they have new, basically titles to the types of charges they can receive, which means they're going to be in jail or prison a longer period of time. Cool. Easy peasy. Let's get to the part about the SSA. which is over here. Section 416.93, 934. All right, sorry, statute, yeah. So, yeah, okay. How we will determine whether your drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor material to the determination of disability. What Trump is doing with this whole cartel thing, I know he doesn't realize. I know that what it means to the SSA. I know that he doesn't understand how it's going to affect disability benefits. I know that he doesn't understand how it's going to affect retirement benefits. I know that. But the actual outcome of this is that we will be seeing generations of people not losing what their parents built for them. Let me give you an example. What happens to poor areas? Well, if you grew up in a poor area, and I don't just mean like a farm area, I mean like a poor area. If you grew up in a poor area, what happened over the past couple of generations is that the parents built up whatever they could, which usually wasn't much. And the kids had that advantage to take and keep moving forward. But then somewhere in the mix of that, the roads got paved and the drugs started coming in, right? And when the drugs started coming in, those kids got hooked. Those kids started having kids with the dealers. The dealers or the runners then had those kids, and the kids, they didn't want to take care of them, so they got adopted by the grandparents. The grandparents now have the kids, and the kid and the grandparents' children that had the kids, right? Well, they're all drugged up on problems, so they kind of keep doing what they're doing. It's the only life they know, and they need to get their fix. So that whole generation, right? That generation of parents right there of those kids where the grandparents had to take the next generation beyond their children, that whole middle generation wipes out any potential success going forward. It's over, it's gone. Thank you, bye. So now what you have is a totally quasi-useless generation of people who are stuck on drugs. And they're this massive drag on society. And the problem is that, and like people on the left will be like, well, we can't blame users. We can't, because, and that's true. You can't blame them because once they're hooked, they're hooked. But it's like cigarettes. The amount of drag on society on the cost to upkeep these people who are literally throwing any future they have away because they're stuck on it. I mean, it's not even intentional at some point. They don't have the choice of throwing it away. It's been thrown away for them because they can't make choices because the brain needs it. And I'm not getting into the argument of people who abuse heavy drugs versus like tobacco. By the way, nicotine dependence is in the statute for the SSA. I'm not going to do this video on it, but if you look it up, you can find nicotine dependence in the adjudications for the SSA and how they look at it and rule on it. Point that I'm getting at here is that you then have those grandchildren, right? That the grandparents had to adopt. So those grandchildren are still in a poor area. And the grandparents likely spent a lot of their money to try and get those, kids of theirs to get out of their own way to actually do something with their life. Right? Rinse, repeat. They pay a lot of money. Nothing happens. It happens for decades, right? Until ultimately their kid ends up in jail so many times that they're going to be in there for the rest of their life, or they pass away as a result of some horrible injury or some hostile accident with the dealer or whatever. Something happens, okay? That's how it always works. Some of you never work with the homeless. Some of you have never come from a very, very, very poor area. Some of you have never been in a lot of trailer parks to realize that that's how it works. So the problem is, what do you do with the grandchildren? Well, a lot of those grandchildren, right? They still interact with the parents sometimes. They do this, they do that. Some of them become successful, right? And success is, you can range it however you want. Some of them go to drugs themselves. And the problem is now you've got a next generation and another generation and another generation thereafter getting into drugs. This is because the dealers have a product to sell. The product that they can sell means that they can make money. But if you cut off the product's ability to be sold by going to the countries and starting to go ahead and go in and clean out the distribution channels before it makes it into this country, well, then you've got a new situation. Remember, drugs were super cheap when Biden was in. Okay. There was a fluctuation there with the whole COVID situation and the devaluation of the dollar. Sure. But considering, The price of eggs did this, drugs pretty much consistent, right? Throughout that period. So my point to you is, as a result, what's happening now is that basically we have a situation where the SSA is no longer, if they keep with this movement, going to have as many disabled people and people retiring early as a result of drug abuse. And drug abuse is just one of those things where it's never really going to go away. I've explained this, it's hard to explain. So I was sitting there a couple of, I think it was a couple months ago. And it was, no, it was more than that. It was like July-ish of last year. I was sitting there with a Republican, but we went back and forth on things, and they're like, I don't get why these kids don't work hard. And I'm like, well, most people that are working right now have 2 to 3 jobs to pay for your retirement benefits, bub, and that blew that was a fight. But, bottom line is this, they don't realize how bad the drugs have hit, you know, all these different generations, Gen Y, millennials, Gen Z, all that stuff. They don't understand that America has this giant population of abusers who are on their way to becoming useless to capitalism, which sounds scary and this and that, but let's call it like it is. Anybody who has to do a job to be able to eat is, the result of capitalism. It's the thing that's basically saying, in order for you to go ahead and survive, you got to do this for us, the politicians. Because remember, if they didn't like capitalism, they wouldn't keep it. That's the reality of it. So, anyways, there's this rule. There's a rule inside the SSA. Let me read it to you real quick. General, if we find that you are disabled and have medical evidence of your drug addiction or alcoholism, we must determine whether your drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor. That's important. Remember that word, contributing factor, material. That's the other really important word to the determination of disability, unless we find that you are eligible for benefits because of your age or blindness. Okay. Here's the gig. Here's the gig with this thing, right? We must determine whether your drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor. Contributing factor means that, like, your impairments would be moderate. Your impairments would be, essentially moderate, not as bad. But then when you take the drugs, they become severe. So, like, if you're high on, this or that, or, whatever, if you're high on crack, and right, a terrible, terrible situation for a person to be in, and you have severe anxiety and PTSD, you have severe schizophrenia or any one of these, particular items, or panic attacks, then if you got off of that drug, you might only have moderate impairments, in which case the SSA wouldn't pay you benefits because you only have moderate disabling conditions. Now, contributing factor material. How do we know you're using and abusing? Well, sometimes you'll go to the doctor and you'll tell the doctor, on their sheet, have you been using drugs within about a day? So you'll be like, yeah. Okay, fine. And then for the rest of your whole life, the whole schmutz, the timeline of your existence, doctors will put down, this person is, has used and abused in the past, check, make sure they're no longer using, give them therapy notifications and guidance on, how to get away from it. For the rest of your life, medical record, for the most part. I mean, at some point they'll cut it off if you've been through a program, or, you ask them to stop and you clearly have stopped using and abusing. Cameraman, let me put a little heart on that. Thank you for the $5 donation. A year ago, all right, let's see what it says. Walter said Biden administration was letting mentally disabled people work at the airport, blind pilots. Now Trump said the same. So yeah, look, there's a lot of things that Biden did that I liked. Well, no, there's a lot of things he talked about that I liked. What he actually got done, look, he was like that shitty employee. They talk a good game, you hire them, and then they're just, they don't get shit done. They're a shit show, but people like him, but he didn't actually get things done, right? Look, Trump has passed more things and executive orders than Biden did in his 4 years, and Trump he's we're talking days. You know what I mean? So the point I'm getting at here is, at the end of the day, I liked a lot of Biden's. I liked a lot of the Democratic Party's ideas. I liked his pre-White House website a lot. I was very personally let down by the Democratic Party. I was very, very upset about it. I was upset about it in year 3, and that boiled over into year 4. And I never really got through any of the bitterness with that because, you're sour. They had great ideas and amazing ideas. I am hopeful for a Martin O'Malley I'm but let me do a little side channel here. And I think this is important. I think what you have to understand is this. The Democratic Party has to completely re-review who they are. This whole mega loss that they had, lost the House, lost the Senate, lost the White House. That loss was caused specifically because people cannot relate to what they were demanding. They were demanding that traditional Americans, people who have kids, they get married, male and female, bend a knee to this very tiny group of trans and LGBTQ people. And should we bend a knee? We should bend a little bit. We should bow a little, but bend a full knee? No, 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 no. Because both sides should bow a little bit to each other as a sign of respect. It shouldn't be one thing where this side has to demand the acquiescence of this other side. It shouldn't be like that. I mean, look at the stories that just came out. You had those girls doing the thing where they spin around and they throw it, right? They said they wouldn't compete against the male competing against them. The school banned them from ever competing in competitions again. Absolute immoral insanity. And it's upsetting because, like sports are one of the main things that keeps people off of drugs. It's just weird. It was just a lot of poorly articulated ways to address. And that was the thing. And here's a little side note. I see racism all the time when it comes to Social Security Administration stuff. I see it all the time. I see it on the part of the claimants applying. I see it on the part of some of the, actions on behalf of the SSA. And it's not just racism against, the classic, which America has a fetish with against black people or brown people. It's racism against whites. Happens all the time. Okay. One of the classic things that I really disagreed with the Democratic Party on, which used to be a Republican thing, was that the Democrats were saying, there could be no racism against whites because they're the majority. In World War II, the Jewish people were becoming a financial majority, and in some small areas, the actual majority of the people. And if you haven't studied the history of it and what happened, they used that as a means to allow punishment towards the majority to take what they had because they were in a winning solution spot where they had money and success and they had the ability to protect themselves and create safe neighborhoods, etc. And then the Germans said, no, 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 no. We're going to take that from you. You can't have that. So when I see people saying, well, you can pick on the majority, you can pick on rich people, I sit back and I say, what did they do wrong first? Give me a reason that they did something wrong first. Show that to me. Otherwise, you are literally German in World War II scenario against the people that nearly exterminated my genetics. Like, you have to understand it is wrong to attack people just because they're part of the majority. That's wrong. That's very, very, it doesn't give you the openness, the availability to just create racism rampantly against whoever the majority is. But again, and that's, it was just very frustrating for me. I talked with, we're having an emotional moment. I talked with it was basically an advocate on behalf of one of the politicians. I talked with him about it, and privately he can agree with me, but publicly it's like you're either this thing or you're out. And the Christian part of the Republican thing is like that too. You know what I mean? And I got into it recently with a person about that because as I got into a pissy battle, and we'll get back to this real quick. This final thought. So a Republican, very Christian, said to me, "How dare you say, God damn, or God this, or God that, And she said, and this wasn't actually the person I was first talking to about it, which I've known for a while. So the person said to me, basically, it was really simple. You should say, gosh, damn. And I said, why would I say, gosh, damn? And she's like, well, because that's not God's. That's a more polite. It's not using his name in vain. And I said to her, well, wait. First of all, God is a translation off of the original biblical texts where God's name, which my people won't even say, is Yahweh. Yahweh is the origin. That is the name chosen by God to be referred to by God. Yahweh is the actual name of God. God is just a translation error, just like Lord. The Lord is just a translation error into the Americanized version and European version of these books. And if that's, the way it is, then you can't, look, you can't say, Yahweh damn this person, but it's okay to say gosh damn. Well, God is just another version of Yahweh. So saying gosh is another version of God. So, to me, it was just like, and that's part of the thing. The Christians, they don't grow up in their own religion, a lot of them. Some of them do, but nowadays, not so much. So you have a largely illiterate class of religious studying individuals that are going to tell you how to live your life in the largest religion on planet Earth, Christianity, which is just weird for me. It's just weird for me. Anyways, the point is, if you ever get a chance to study the origin of Christianity, what the original Bibles had, they're very different books than what we have now. What we have now is the Plato version of essentially Christianity. Albeit, I will say this: I do love the books that have like all the pictures and everything. Adorable, love them. With that said, my apologies. It is late, and I've been kind of beat up. It's been a lot of work. All right. So the point is, Trump's passing a law that is going to save Social Security Administration a lot of money because fewer and fewer people will be able to get the drugs to become drug addicts in the long term. Drug addicts cannot get drugs when they can't afford them unless they work a deal. But drug dealers won't be able to distribute those drugs to basically the drug users if the drug users use up too much of their drug credit, right, too quickly. If the drugs are significantly more expensive, then those drugs distributed through drug credit to the user, they're going to get to that amount of what they owe really quickly. In which case, they have to go to jail, go to another state, go live somewhere else, go live in another country to get away from the dealer that they owe money to. I know some of you guys don't really come from that world. You know what I mean? It's fine. It's no biggie. All right. So, anyways, I'm seeing the quotations here, basically about and that's the thing. That's the funny thing. If you study the actual origin story of Jesus and then you go back to the biblical text and the Hebrew religion, you realize like this is a very different story than modern day Christianity. But that's okay. That's okay. Like if we ever had access to the Pope's library, like you would be shocked what's in there. You would be your mind would be like blown. You're like, oh my goodness, what we have now is like a carefully constructed, book that people study, but it was not that book in the beginning. It was a very different book. And then when you look at the different translations, oh my goodness, like it's all over the place. It's spaghetti. It's all over the place. That's why I keep telling people like study God through all religions. God doesn't just pop up in one religion. He pops up in all religions. Like, of course people make these books and the books get, varied this way and that way. I get it, but he's throughout the entire timeline of human history. Okay. It's the origin to the very end. When humans no longer exist, God will be there the entire timeline. So anyway, back to what this video is about. My apologies for being all over the place. It's just very late. It's 1:49 a.m. So the point I'm getting at is, anyway, process. We will follow when we have medical evidence of your drug addiction or alcoholism. One, the key factor we will examine in determining whether drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor material to the determination of disability is whether we would still find you disabled if you stopped using drugs or alcohol. So just to understand, when they adjudicate a claim, judge a claim, if you were to go ahead and stop drugs, would you still be severely impaired? Now, there's wiggle room in that. We're going to go into a little bit of that because I printed out the much larger actual ruling on drug abuse and how it works. So you're going to get the full thing tonight on how they actually use drugs and do the review of them. Part 2, in making this determination, we will evaluate which of your current physical and mental limitations upon which we based our current disability determinations would remain if you stopped using drugs or alcohol, and then determine whether any, all, or all of your remaining limitations would be disabling. Put another way, they look at all of your impairments. They bullet point them out. Which ones are affected by the drugs? Which ones are not? If we remove drugs, is this person still disabled from those that are affected by the drugs? Right? If you still would be severely impaired, unable to work, etc., without the drugs, then you're found disabled. But if the drugs can be removed and you would improve, like many of them rule, like that's a fast way to get somebody denied. It's an easy way for judges to deny people. Then in that instance, right, the whole thing is that, basically you're abusing. They can use it as an excuse to deny you. Some of them take it. That's just the way it is. Charles Lewis, thank you for the 4.99 donation. Super appreciate it. Would love some sleep. God, I need sleep so bad. Now, with that said, okay, if we determine that your remaining limitation would not be disabling, we will find that your drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor material to the determination of disability. Easy peasy. If we determine that your remaining limitations are disabling, you are disabled independent of your drug addiction or alcoholism, and we will find that your drug addiction or alcoholism is not a contributing factor material to the determination of disability. So, in other words, and that was 416.934. In other words, bottom line is this creates a loophole for judges when they see drug abuse on the record to deny the claimant. Now, what do they have to do? It's not as easy as just boop, boop, boop. It's not that easy. There's more to it than that. They have to run through the 5-step sequential process, the 5 elements of whether or not somebody's disabled twice. So it's not easy. They got to go through it twice. Do they write out the full analysis in their briefs when they adjudicate somebody at the OHO level? Usually not. Usually they'll just do a little paragraph about whether or not the drugs are material to that individual and, yada, yada. So the point is this, cameraman, thank you for the, for sending your show off to, thank you for the $2 donation. Appreciate it. Sharon, thank you for gifting the Social Security to Tara. That's awesome. Tara, good to see you. I see you there again. Paul Harrison, wow, big donation. $10 donation. You're the hardest working man in the business. I would say I work more hours than all the other disability attorneys. I know that. That is an absolutely easily provable fact. Let's get over to the reason for this whole thing real quick. Again, thank you, Paul Harrison. That's an amazing donation. I really appreciate it. The reason for this video is that if we have less drugs in this country, generational increases in the abilities of Americans will skyrocket. It will skyrocket. I know that there's a lot of families who have bright kids that have ruined their entire life on drugs. You will usually see a lot of women, some of them very beautiful, right, being passed around as a result of their use and abuse because they're just trying to find their next hit. And they end up in some trap house. They end up in some beat up trailer, etc. And it's very sad. It's very sad. And it shouldn't be happening that way. Why was the government so slow to go ahead and go after these cartels? I don't know. Trump started it. He never really kicked it off the ground like he needed to. Biden totally erased everything that was there. And now Trump's kicking it back up. I don't know. I'm not sure. Why was it acceptable to, and that's the thing I always go back to with Biden. You're right. We need immigrants. We need them. But you could have just made it so that you were letting more people in through the gates. Like you could have just done that. You know what I mean? If you wanted to bring in millions of people, you could have just made a bigger gate. You didn't have to literally weld open the, sections of the fence to just let people wander in. So, the bottom line is this, if we have less drug abuse, over generations, we will see fewer and fewer disabled people. We will see more people working and achieving higher things with their vocational abilities, right? So they get more education, they get, basically promoted more, they do more and more and more to help society achieve whatever their job requires them to achieve. Now, what is the effect that nobody talks about? The effect that nobody talks about with this whole thing is that the kids of that generation that would have been taken by drugs will then have a proper upbringing. One of the major problems that we have in America is that we have a lot of shitty parents. And I know that sounds mean, but if we could just be honest with each other, all of these YouTube videos of, young people, old people behaving poorly are usually the result of crap parents, right? If you've ever sat down with somebody I'm going to say this, and maybe it'll connect with you, maybe it won't. But if you ever sat down with somebody and that person was trying to make you feel bad, was trying to put shit on your shoulders that really had no business being there, was trying to make you feel like you should be dragged through the mud for who you are. That person doing that to you was abused by their parents and made to manipulate by order. They could sit there and try and manipulate you until you feel bad to make them feel a little good. That's all built into them at a very young age. So, this is the base building block where Trump is passing to go after the cartels to create a future with better kids, because we're going to get better parents raising better kids to have more jobs to tax more FICA taxes out of them. This is crucial. This is crucial. So, as a result of that, the bottom line is that we need essentially a very hardline aggressive attack towards drug distribution. Now, this act, what he's executive order, is basically something that goes after the high level people. It doesn't really talk about the runners. A lot of you don't know how it works. So I'm just going to give you a quick summary down on how actual drug distribution illegally works in this country. There are drugs that usually come from China. They get distributed to basically the entry point countries. That's Canada or basically Mexico. Some people from Cuba will try and run stuff over, but again, that's, we're talking smaller peanuts to bigger fruit. So the point is, when they get to that point, they're packaged in into this material to go ahead and get them in the country. So think like nautical, keeping the waves out material. Then at that point, because remember, if you're going by, plane, you still got to drop it somewhere. A lot of this stuff comes in by tunnels and submarines. So at that point, basically, they got to get it into the country. Once they get it into the country, it goes to a main person for an area. Okay. That main person for the area will then distribute it to their gang. That gang, right, will be in different locations. So what they do is, okay, so there's the main person. They get a lineup of like 6 or 7 cars. Okay, 6 or 7 cars. So when they got to transport the stuff to different locations, they have 6 or 7 cars with the drug car in the middle. So if you ever see a column of cars that all are like all random weird cars, it's not like a politician with a bunch of black SUVs, but it's a bunch of just random vehicles all really tightly driving together. The reason that is that a drug dealer with all of his buddies, his gang, is driving the drugs. They're driving it to different points. And these will be distribution points. These will be trap houses, basically. The reason they do that is because if a cop comes after one of them, then they can split and go all over the place with multiple cars. And their whole job is to make the cop go after the wrong car. And when they do that, they basically can't get enough cop cars to go ahead and follow the proper, all these different 5 or 6 cars, 6 or 7 cars. So the drugs get to where they need to be. They lose a person who gets arrested for evasive driving, blah, blah, blah. But that's not a big deal. It's part of the game for them. Now, once the drugs get to the trap house, the location where it's supposed to be, okay, what happens is they basically go ahead and begin the distribution process. Distribution processes, you have your hub and then you have your runners. Runners will take orders and drive it to either directly to the client who's going to buy it, which are unfortunately a lot of disabled people still, or they will go ahead and set up inside a hotel. And every other night, they'll get a different hotel room, and that hotel room will represent essentially the ability to go ahead and distribute from that hotel room from the runner's location. Now, what usually happens is you have one person that stays at the hotel room, and the runner will go out and run. But usually at that level, the runners are users who are looking to get a payment in drugs. That's how it works. Okay, cool. So now you kind of understand what's going on. So the point is, with all of that, the disability judges, they don't usually come from that world. They have to sit there and figure out whether or not they can go ahead and approve this person. Now, I've represented a lot of drug users, but I don't take nearly as many Rude Rabbit put, Walter, may the squirrel be with you. I know I'm super tired, so my squirrel brain is like all over the place right now. My ADHD is taking over. So my point is with this whole thing, if you go ahead and look at the judges and how they'll rule, they've got to figure out who they want to allow, who's using and abusing, and who they don't. If they see in the record repetitive use of drugs and they still want to approve the person, then they will pick a month that is after the last month of use and abuse. So they'll wipe out a lot of back pay. That's usually what they'll do if it's a good claim. However, if it's not a good claim or it's a middle ground claim, denied, gone, not giving disability benefits, which is why I have significantly pulled back from taking as many claimants who have use and abuse on their record. And the reason why is that I just can't win them like I used to. The judges won't allow them. All right, so here's the thing. How do we define the term DAA? Although the terms drug addiction and alcoholism are medically outdated, we continue to use the terms because they are used in the act. With one exception, nicotine use disorders. We define the term DAA as substance use disorders. That is, substance dependence or substance abuse as defined in the latest edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, the DSM. Cool. Published by the American Psychiatric Association, yada, yada, yada. All right, let's skip through this stuff because this is the baby stuff. Hold on. Okay, what is our DAA policy? The key factor we will examine in determining whether drug addiction or alcoholism is a contributing factor material to the determination of disability is whether we would still find a claimant disabled if he or she would stop using drugs or alcohol. DAA is not material to the determination that the claimant is under a disability if the claimant would still meet our definition of disability if he or she were not using drugs or alcohol. If DAA is not material, we find that the claimant is disabled. DAA is material to the determination of disability if the claimant would not meet our definition of disability if he or she were not using drugs or alcohol. If DAA is material, we find that the claimant is not disabled. When do we make DAA materiality determinations? Basically, they find medical evidence that says substance abuse, P test, you got a hair test, you got basically, a blood test, anything that's going to show and stick on you when you go to the emergency room. And that's why when I talk to these claimants who have it in their system and they can't get off it, I tell them, look, just to be clear, just to be very, very clear, they are going to de facto try and, catch you when they can. So if you get hit while you're on your bicycle by a car and it's in your system, that's going to be in the med rec. And then just so you're aware, when you're in the hospital, they're going to write a report. The judge is going to see it, and then boom, they're going to kill your benefits up to that point. Now, here's the deal. Materiality. This is like the most important part of this whole thing. You got to understand when these become material. Okay. When drug abuse is material to not allow somebody to become disabled. All right. Burden of proof. The claimant has the burden of proving disability throughout the sequential evaluation process. Our only burden is limited to producing evidence that work that the claimant can do exists in the national economy at step 5 of the sequential evaluation process. So basically, they've got to show that there's work, which is any relevant jobs in the national economy that the claimant could potentially do. When we apply the steps of the sequential evaluation a second time, because remember how we talked, they have to apply it twice, right? They have to apply it the first time, and then they apply it again as if drugs didn't exist, okay? When we apply the steps of the sequential evaluation a second time, the 5 elements of disability to win it a second time, to determine whether the claimant would be disabled if he or she were not using drugs or alcohol, it is our long-standing policy that the claimant continues to have the burden of proving disability through the DAA materiality analysis. There does not have to be evidence from a period of abstinence for the claimant to meet his or her burden of proving disability. We describe various considerations that may apply when we decide whether we must consider the issue of materiality, and if so, whether the DAA is material to the determination of disability. In this Social Security ruling, we address these considerations as a DAA evaluation process in a series of 6 steps. Although the steps are in a logical order from the simplest to the most complex cases, we do not require our adjudicators to follow them in the order we provide. For example, when DAA is the only impairment, adjudicators can go directly to step 3 and deny the claim because DAA is material. And that's another trick that happens with these judges. They will deny somebody by saying, "Hey, I see these other impairments; they're all mild. This use and abuse, we're gonna that one medical facility, that one therapist you went to said that it was severe. Boom, that's the only material impairment, diagnostic impression limitation, and they'll use that to deny it." Okay, so let's go through this real quick. Here are basically the steps that they use to either keep somebody, or allow somebody to receive benefits or deny them for drug abuse. Okay. Number one, does the claimant have DAA, right? Drugs and alcohol abuse. If no, then basically, you're good. Everything's good. You can continue with your adjudication. If yes, then we go to step two. Step two, is the claimant disabled considering all impairments, including DAA? So that person with all of their medical conditions plus all of the drug abuse, are they still disabled with all their impairments plus their drug abuse? If no, do not determine DAA materiality, denial. If yes, go to step three. If the drugs and alcoholism are the only impairment, then immediately you deny the claim. If they're not, we go to step four. Is the other impairment disabling by itself while the claimant is dependent upon or abusing drugs or alcohol? Now, just remember this part. This is important. If somebody is using and abusing and they're trying to get disability benefits, the SSA can usually find somewhere a quotation from a doctor where the doctor said, this person seems like they are drug seeking, or this person may be, should be reviewed for drug abuse or given certain therapies related to drug abuse. Okay. They will find something in the medical record because the doctors are going to throw the potential user under the bus. Now, with that said, they will then begin the process of saying, okay, with these other impairments, are they disabling enough by themselves while the claim is dependent upon or abusing drugs or alcohol? If no, DAA is material, drugs and alcoholism, it's material, and then you get a denial. If yes, you go to step five. Okay, step five, does the DAA cause or affect the claimant's medically determinable impairments? Okay. So, do the drugs and alcohol cause your impairments to become more severe, like severity level, where it's all the way up to extreme potentially? Because look, if you're always using and abusing dust or up or down or, crack, then the bottom line is it is material to making your impairments worse no matter what. So, does the drug and alcohol cause or affect the claimant's medically determinable impairments? If no, the DAA, the drugs and alcohol, is not material, you get an allowance. Because you're severely impaired. But if they do, yes, but the other impairment is irreversible or could not improve to the point of non-disability, DAA is not material and you get an allowance. So let me give you an example of that. Let's say somebody abused drugs and alcohol, and now they've got an impairment where it's never going to improve. Like it's irreversible. That they're gone. They're a goner. They've got it. It is what it is. We're talking water under the bridge. They're never going to improve. Okay. So, the bottom line with this, just to be fair, let's be very fair, is that essentially we give drug addicts a break with getting disability benefits when, as a result of their use and abuse, it may have caused an impairment. And that impairment is to some degree terminal, to some degree irreversible. To some degree, they're never going to be okay. They're never going to be able to work. It's not even close. It is what it is. In that instance, even though they are a user and abuser, we still give them the benefits. Because, be fair, it doesn't matter if they use or abuse. That impairment is never going away or getting better. Now, if, for example, does the drug and alcohol cause or affect the claimant's medically determinable impairments? If yes, the DAA could be material, and we go to step six. Six, would the other impairments improve to the point of non-disability in the absence of the drugs and alcohol? So and this is the most important question. A lot of judges, they just skip right to six. They don't do the whole 1, 2, 3, 4. And they're in their OHO briefs, right? It's just they go right to six. Oh, they'll have step one. Here are the drugs that they're using. Here's the record citation. And then right there, step six, these are either material or not. So what they're saying is when it comes to use and abuse. These drugs could go ahead realistically and cause the person to flutter potentially in between moderate and severe and moderate and severe. And the way the judges come at this is they look at the record. You know how some people be like, I hate going to the doctor. I hate going to the emergency room. I hate medical anything. Rah, 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 rah. Right. They go through this whole process. And the thing with it is that as a result of going through that process, they create a situation where they're usually only going to medical after they've had too much drugs. Their anxiety and panic attacks are, full blown, right? They've abused enough, they've lost too much, and, their panic attacks are full blown. So, what you see in the record is a person who basically, to be fair, is showing that, could be, and let me give you an example, right? I had a claimant, guy would, get into a car accident, get into a fight, get arrested. Every single time alcohol was involved, every single time. So what does that mean? It means that the impairment caused the person to become more severely impaired as a result. And that is the crucial part of this that you have to see. How was the record built? And my point to this with you guys who are, on disability benefits, etc. The point of this that I'm getting at is that, at the end of the day, once you receive your benefits, you could go through the 8-step sequential process. You have to make sure your claim doesn't look like you're abusing legally prescribed or street drugs. It's crucial. Patrick Jean LeBlanc Hardy, thank you for the $1.99 donation. That's awesome. Very, very cool. Give a little thumbs up there. Cameraman, $2. Walter, can you do my law books on audio with a nice voice? I don't know, man. Maybe. This field doesn't pay much, so maybe. Yeah. So, wow. Rude Rabbit did a massive, massive donation. Absolutely incredible. I do actually. I do. That's amazing. The homeless vets. So I basically met with a couple homeless vets. And what happens, but Rude Rabbit, again, thank you. That is amazing. Let me put the little heart there. That is absolutely incredible. That is a massive donation. We actually will have in the not too distant future more videos coming out where basically the veterans and also other homeless people are being interviewed to explain to people what happened. They started here, they got here, then they're here, and now they're in the homeless facility. And with veterans, the tough thing for them is that they usually got out of, some aspect of military, they were in this branch, that they were doing this, and they get out, they work a job for a little bit, and then all of a sudden their PTSD catches up with them, or pain that they have all over catches up with them, so they get grouchy. And then boom, all of a sudden they're fighting to try and get their VA benefits, their PNT or their TDIU. And the tricky thing with it is that the process is really not built the right way to assess people quickly as to how severe they are. And with veterans, veterans are a different breed of individual because they've had some traumatic thing happen to them. They were screaming in their face, pushing them around, demanding a lot more from their body than most people ever experience. Some of them were in combat, some of them weren't. It's a very different breed of a human. And so the kicker is the style of evidence that's created for that individual is very different. A lot of people don't realize that veterans, basically will get onto using pain medications to try and fight what's going on. They'll get onto heavy mental medications to try and keep things down because, they'll hear voices and they'll hear screaming and stuff like that. When a lot of people, you'll notice with the VA is not big on giving a diagnostic impression of PTSD. There's like an anti thing going on with the VA with that. And as a result of that, the very interesting aspect of it is that the VA, they know, the voices in the head, the quick jerk reactions, right? The psychomotor agitation, right? They know all these things relate to it, but they want to stay away from PTSD because they don't want to pay all those people. So the ultimate thing that's really tough with the veterans is that you're basically fighting that person who is fighting to be who they were. Let me explain why that's tough. With a lot of people applying for disability benefits that are civilians, they're, basically they get it, right? They got to be the disabled person at which they claim they are. They can't be a Superman. They can't be a superhero. They've already put the cape away. They're like, I'm going to complain about my problems. I'm going to be a whiner. And they get it. But veterans, that's not how it works. Veterans will fight you because they're fighting their impairments to be in their head the person that they used to be. So they wear the cape a lot more. And you have to slowly get them to convert into what the program needs from them to get them the benefits so that they can live their life and usually get away from everybody because everybody pisses them off. So that's the thing with veterans. The very tricky thing about representing veterans is that you have to somehow convince them that they have to be something else for these programs for them to get what they need to become who they are meant to be. It's a very difficult situation because a lot of veterans, they join up because they want to, have a model version of themselves in the future, something that they can be proud of. A lot of Americans don't have that. Like if you said to Americans, like most Americans, like, go fight for your country, most Americans would be like, why? But on the other end, you have the model Americans who are like, I will go fight for the freedoms of my country. I will fight for everybody's rights so they can have the rights to go ahead and go out there and hold up a sign. What's amazing is that our programs cater to the people over here, who are out there saying, we want more of this, we want more of that. They don't cater to the people who go through the most abusive, terrible situations that exist. And that is a mind warp. If you ever get a chance to sit down and look at that and think about it and see how that works, it's a very interesting situation. And yeah, cameraman, military is taught not to complain while in service, so you never go to the sick bay, no documentation, and that's across the board. Even you go to, I get the NASA guys. The NASA guys, they don't want to complain about something because they'll get pulled off a project. They get pulled off a project, they're never going back on that project. So the system is built to kind of play that game, and it's not a good thing. So yes, Robin Rouge, yeah, absolutely. PTSD, all civilians, veterans, they all get it. Although veterans, they do tend to be in more PTSD causing circumstances. I don't just mean the mess hall. They face things that a lot of individuals would not mentally be able to digest. And to be fair, they have training to do it. So they're more set up to take the abuse. They're like that old truck with the big old tires on it that will go through the mud when, the Camry won't. But at the same time, I got to tell you, when people go into the Marines, I know that the percentage of likelihood that they're going to come out mentally shaken, even though their body's tough and they're this and that. Hey, and they never lose that. You always see the Marine guys with a backpack. They're always got a backpack on them because, they've always got like some backpack in case they need something to happen. They've always got their back to the wall because they're watching the door. You'll never get that out of them. But they leave always with a long briefcase filled with emotional damage. And, it's just a very, very difficult thing. But again, Rude Rabbit, that was a massive donation. Absolutely amazing. So I really, really appreciate that. That's absolutely incredible. So with that said, let's go through this real quick. So now you understand that, just to summarize with this video, basically Trump is taking a hard stance against the distribution lines of drug abuse, which is the smartest way to do it, because if you wreck the distribution lines, the stuff never makes it into this country, or if it does make it into this country, you can prosecute it more aggressively. He is not so far going after the runners and the users that much. I feel like that's going to come farther down the line. And I will say this, during Trump's last administration, I did see quite a few of my claimants who were users and abusers basically going to jail quite a bit, and they seem to be in longer. So with that said, I think he will be going in that direction. However, this is a very smart move. I hope America sticks with this move, because generation after generation, the fewer people who are able to get into the lifestyle of using and abusing alcohol and drugs will lead a much better, more productive life, which means there will be fewer people having to go on disability benefits, because that generation will seek to have more money from work and chase after that American dream. Well, the American dream is really shitty right now because, the oil money isn't working like it's supposed to, and the reserve currency isn't really, as big as strong as it's supposed to. But if we move in a proper direction, we give a little bit of kindness to the capitalism of America, then we will start to see us climb out of the hole that we're currently in. Although the hole, to be fair, the trillions that we owe is very deep. It's unbelievable how they spent that much money that quickly. Now, with that said, I hope you understand that this affects Social Security benefits in a long-term sense. But I hope you also understand that basically, if you are somebody who is using and abusing, go find help. Go ask people. There are usually two main ways that people are successful with essentially abuse and use. I'm going to say this. Some of you are going to be mean to me about it. I totally get that. It is what it is. The two main ways that people get out of use and abuse are number one, jail/prison, right? Yeah, they can still get the stuff while they're in there. But for the most part, that is the most cleansing effect that I've seen, is the most effective way to get people off of using and abusing. Number two, although they still have the dope paper and stuff like that, but number two is a complete religious intervention where they go full, Christ, full Jesus. They go full, and whatever religion it is, they go full into that. Those are the only two ways that I've seen it successfully work. Long enough time in jail, or well, prison, and then basically, essentially full religious conversion. There are people who go into dual diagnosis facilities and get away from the stuff. But for the most part, I haven't seen that be very successful. It's a tough thing. It's a very tough thing. Now, I'm going to be going live for the next video. I'm sorry I was all over the place with this video, and I was live for way too long, and my apologies. It's just, it was like one-ish something when I started. I had a really long day, a tough day. I get my little PTSD in my head with all the claims and things that are going on. Because remember, I have to live through all these other stories and all these situations. And it is, oh man, let me tell you, you ever look at like the law journals, like these judges that have to review the claims like I do, a lot of them end up with alcohol problems. A lot of them end up with like, family issues, because they're just, it doesn't work. They get frustrated. But Hexen with the $1 donation, I super appreciate that. That's awesome. Very cool with the blue thing there. Very cool. Thank you. Thank you. So with that said, I will catch you all at the next video. We're going to be doing a short 30-minute segment. And basically the way it works is, you guys know it. You call in, I answer questions. It's super simple, straightforward. And basically any legal questions you have, I'll answer them. I was supposed to go live at 8-ish, but it never happens that way. I am experimenting with days to go live. But the bottom line is that I'm doing this to go ahead and basically make sure I go live on Thursday, even though now it's Friday morning. So I will catch you in the next show. Please remember to like, subscribe, head over to Google, type in Disability Resolution Law Firm, throw some stars up there on the review page for the law firm. I will catch you guys at the next video where I go live. And then if you need a private session of 1 hour, where you just get me during one of my lunch sessions, the mini contract is below. I will catch you later. You have a wonderful night, and I will see you for that video. See you soon. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Have fun and sleep well. If you can't stay awake, okay, cool.